All right, so today's session we're going to be looking at the fire incidents module. I have already logged into the website for ESO, so www.esosuite.net. I'm not sure, I know you guys are already using EHR, but with the fire side, I don't know if you guys are using the mobile application on the EHR side or not, but here on the fire side, we do not have a mobile app at this time. They are currently working on building one. It's going to be a little while yet until it comes out, but until that time, when you want to access your fire incident reporting, you will need to go to the website. So again, www.esosuite.net, your username, password, the same as you've always used, and then your agency code as well, and then you'll go ahead and log in. When you're ready to do your fire incident report, you'll go ahead and click on the Fire tab here on the left-hand side of the screen, and that will take you to our landing page for your fire incidents. As far as this page goes, it is always going to default to the selected view of recent draft. So recent draft view is going to show you reports that are currently in draft status that were started in the last 30 days. So hopefully, as you can see here, there's quite a few that are here right now. These are all reports that have just been, pulled up at some point. When you guys are actually using the software live, this list will be much, much shorter because only reports that need to be completed will be listed here. All the reports that are done, finished, taken care of, those will all be gone. Those will be on the list on the locked side. So you won't see near as many as what you're seeing here today. When we're looking at reports that are listed here on the landing page, you're going to see the date and time of the call is going to be over here on the left-hand side. You're going to have the status of that report, so draft status or locked, one of the two. The address of the call, so whatever the street address was, and then you'll also see what type of call it was, what units responded to that call, and then if you have a shift assignment, you'll see that listed there as well. Over here on the right-hand side, the italicized I, this is an incident quick summary, so if you were to click on that, it will bring up additional information for you. So you can see property use, apparatus that responded, personnel that were on the call, and so forth. Next to that is a small paperclip icon. If you have any kind of attachments attached to your report, those will pop up here. You'll see a little number appear there above the paperclip indicating to you that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many attachments you may have. You'll see those there with that paperclip, and if you click on it, you'll pull up all those attachments and you'll be able to see those. And then the last button here on the right-hand side is our Actions panel button. So when you click on that, it's going to bring up options like edit. So if you want to get in and edit the report, if you need to print the report for some reason, you can print it from here. If you want to add additional attachments, you can do that. And then the delete button here at the bottom, only a select few individuals at your agency will have the capability or the ability to delete reports. So if you don't see the delete button, you don't have that responsibility. You will not need to worry about it. One additional thing to talk about here as far as the landing page goes, again, this does default to 30 days of time. So you'll only see me back in the past 30 days. If for any reason you need to go back further than that. So let's say you guys decide to go live December 1st of this year, and next February, you decide, oh, I want to go back and see that report from December. You would need to go to the Filters tab here in the top right-hand corner. And by doing so, here's where I can change that date range interval. I can go back and set it to 180 days or custom. And if you put custom in, then you can just list the exact date that you want to see the report from, and you'll be able to see those reports then from here. So you will not be limited to that 30-day time frame to see those reports. So that's the basic page or the basic setup here of the landing page. It's very, very, very similar to the EMS side, virtually all of the same information. When we are ready to start a fire report, we have three options down here at the bottom. We have add incident. If you add an incident, it basically starts a fire report for you. There's absolutely no data included in it, so there's no times, there's no units included, nothing like that. It's a completely blank report. If you go to import from CAD, when you click on that button here, it'll bring up the list of any CAD records that are available for you to document in the report. So currently you guys have yours set up so it's automatically pulling those over. So that's why we're not seeing any CAD records here. They are already listed right here. So that's why we're not seeing as many calls here. But when you do the import from CAD, and again, any unit that's been dispatched, you're going to see that report listed here. You can click on it, you can highlight it, you can bring it in, and you can start your report from there. And then our last option here is import EHR. Import EHR is for agencies that choose to complete a NIFRS report to accompany the EHR report that they've already completed. So basically in that situation, like here where we have Med 103, when they go ahead and respond to this call, they finish their EMS report, they lock their EMS report. As soon as they lock their EMS report, they can come into the fire side here and click Import EHR. And when they do that, you're going to see the list of any calls that have been completed, and they can go ahead and import that data in. So when you import data in, that's going to pull in things like your times, your units, personnel that were on the call, actions taken. All of those NIFRS data fields that you've already completed on the EMS report will then be pulled into the fire report as well. So you'll have very few fields that you actually need to complete in the actual fire report. Most of the data will already be done. When you come over to the EHR import field, if you see any here that are unlocked or unavailable, that just indicates to you that that medical report has not yet been completed, and so that's why it's unavailable. So that's why it says unavailable or import until all associated incidents are locked. So at that point, that medical report is still being worked on. That's why it's unavailable to be imported at this time. So when we are starting a report, the primary method for starting the report is going to be to use this import from CAD. That will pull your data in. You'll have all your units and so forth listed there and have all your times. If for some reason, if I click on this import from CAD and I don't see my CAD data and I'm like, okay, where's my CAD data at? I call dispatch and dispatch tells me, oh, the CAD software is down. We can't kick out any data right now. It's going to be a little while till it's back up working again. You always have the capability of coming over here to add incident, and you can add in a blank incident with absolutely no times included whatsoever, and that way you can just start from there. And then once the CAD data does become available later, you're always able to go back and pull that data at that point. So you can always grab the CAD data at a later time if you need to do so. So that's your backup. So this is the primary method. Click import from CAD, bring in your data at that point. Add incident is going to be your fallback in case you can't, and then we can add the CAD data after that. Does that make sense so far? Everything good? Any questions?
We're good.
All right. So normally what I would do, I would click import CAD, I would find the call that I'm going on, and I would import that in. So a lot of these have come across already, so I'm just going to go ahead and grab one of them here. Let's go ahead and go to this one here. Let me take a quick look here just to make sure that this one's going to work okay. Yep, that'll work. All right, so when you come into the CAD report or come into the fire report, this is basically what you're going to see at this point. The setup, very, very similar to that what we have on the EMS side. So we have the report broken down into different categories here across the top of the page. So we have the basic, unit reports, fire, casualty, and so forth. You'll notice across the top, some of these are in white, others are in black. The reason for that, when we are working in the fire report, if there are tabs that are opened up, if they are available to you, they will be in white. So here in the basic tab, the unit reports tab, those two are opened up. There is data that we can plug in there if we'd like to do so. Along with it being in white, if you notice that yellow exclamation point right there, that indicates to you that there are required fields in that page that must be completed before you can close out the report. So we know we've got some fields here we need to complete, and we know we've got some stuff over here on the unit reports page. Any of these that are blacked out here on the right-hand side, that just indicates to us at this point in the report, because of the information that we've already plugged in, we do not need to fill out any information in these tabs. Now that will ultimately change as you put different information in. So you'll see it change as we put in our incident type. As we put in other information, we'll show you that as we go along and show you how we make access to each one of these individual tabs. With this report, the top here of the incident page, we have our incident number. This is going to be assigned by CAD. So when we imported that in, that's the number that was assigned there. Next to that is our CAD import. So if you had to start the report by clicking Add Incident, because the CAD data was not available to you at that point, you can click the CAD import button at a later time right here, and that will bring in your times once it is available. So it'll pull in your units and your times and things of that nature. So this is that CAD update button, basically pulling in new data. The incident date, so when this report was created by your CAD, it was October 22nd. And the NIFRS number that you see here, this is a pre-assigned number. So what this NIFRS number is for our state reporting purposes. So basically when these reports get sent to the state, we want to ensure that there's not duplicate numbers. We want to ensure that no numbers got skipped, those sorts of things. So that's why when you look at this NIFRS number here, you can't edit it, you can't change it, you can't delete it, you can't do anything with it. It is a preset number. You cannot make any changes to it. Directly below that is our first required field, the incident type. You'll notice right away that here on the fire side of the reporting software, we have the red required boxes. The fire side, the NIFRS reporting, it's very black and white. There's not a whole lot of gray area as to far as what we should have and shouldn't have. So all of the required fields are clearly identified with this red required box, so you'll know exactly what you have to do. In addition to that, you're going to see your validation issues up here in the top right-hand corner. So with the validation issues, you get a running tally right here in this white box. So right now I've got 19 issues that I need to fix before I could close this report. And if I click on this validation issues, it will bring up the list of everything that I need to complete before I close out this report. So I've got all of those listed there. Just like on the EMS side, if you click on any one of the items in this list, it will take you right where you need to go to complete that information. So it's very easy to locate those, pull it in, and you've got it completed. So with our incident type, let's go ahead and go to our first required field here. When I click into that box, it is going to bring up my list for me. Again, just like on the EMS side, basic setup here, we've got our list populating for us on the right-hand side of the screen. One of the differences with these lists that you see here, it is broken down into categories. Whereas on the EMS side, it's basically one great big long list. You scroll through, you find what you're looking for. Here on the fire side, it's broken down. So under incident types, we have our 100 series incidents, our 200 series incidents, 300, and so forth. As you are looking through these different categories, you notice the blue arrow coming out the right-hand side of the screen. That just indicates to you that there are additional fields below that. So if I were to click on the fire category here, there's my additional subcategories. And again, I've got more to pick from here. So I can go to fire, let's say structure fire. I can click on that, and that brings me to another layer of options. Now, when those blue arrows on the right-hand side disappear, that indicates to you at that point that you have gone as far as you can go. There are no additional selections to make here. So if I've gotten to the point where I'm at, and I'm like, okay, yes, building fire, that's what I want. I'm going to go ahead and document that. So I select 111. As soon as I do that, you will notice that the fire tab has now populated here at the top. A yellow exclamation point has appeared, and now I know that that tab is opened. I can put data in, and there are required fields that I need to complete there before I can close out this report. Now, I will point out that right now this EMS tab is here. In your guys' setup, that EMS tab has been shut off, so you will not see that moving forward. This report was just created before that change was made, so that's why this EMS tab is still here, but that will go away. You will not see that when you're moving forward. So whenever you guys go live with this, you will not see that EMS tab on any new reports that you start moving forward. Going back to the incident type for another second, just want to talk about a second option you have here as far as finding what you're looking for. So of course we can scroll through these lists, we can go to our different subcategories, we can find what we're looking for, make the appropriate selection. We also have the ability to use the search bar across the top. Using the search bar, you have two options. I can search for the NIFRS code. So the codes have not changed. So for those of you that have filled out reports in the past, those codes are all going to be exactly the same as they have always been. So if I go to building fire, it's 111. If I go to grass fire, it's 143. Things of that nature. All of those codes will remain the same. One difference or one addition you're going to see here is the ability to search keywords. So for instance, I like to use the example, I was in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, training with those folks down there. And during one of our training sessions, they got a call for a elevator that had stalled at one of the local hotels there, and a couple people trapped in the elevator. I had absolutely no idea what that code was, but I could type in elevator, and there it is, removal of victims from a stalled elevator, 353. So I could make that selection and then continue my report from there. So you can search code, or you can search keyword, whichever is most appropriate, whichever is easiest for you. All right, any questions on that so far?
Yes. If we do an EMS run, which is the majority of our work, most of this will already be filled out.
Yes. So, and we are in the exact same setting you guys are in. So basically, I think 84, almost 85% of our calls now at the agency I run with here are EMS calls. So when I go on that call, I complete my EMS report. When I've completed the EMS report, I lock it. As soon as I lock it, it's available here on the fire side. So I go to that import EHR, I find the call that I just finished and I import it in. So this incident type will already be here. Shift will already be here. Injury or death will already be here. Action taken will already be here. Scrolling down a little bit further, your location information will already be here. Your times will all be done. Your counts will all be done. Property losses, those won't be applicable because it's an EMS call. Authorization section, you'll have your report writer, that'll be done. The incident narrative is one field you will need to do, and we'll come back to this again once we get to the import EHR. I'll show you this exactly, but yeah, on the most of the fields will already be completed. You'll probably have somewhere around 4 or 5 at the most that you'll need to complete at that point.
Okay.
So it's a very, very quick process. It should only take you a couple of minutes at the most. And when we get done with this report, we'll come back and we'll do one of those import EHRs. We'll show you how that works. All right, so we have our incident type completed. Number of alarms, if that's applicable to that situation, you can document that. If it's a medical call, obviously it's not real applicable at that point, so you can go ahead and leave that blank. Station information, so you can go ahead and document wherever station you're responding from. Shift information, so whatever shift you're working. District information. Injury or death. So with the injury or death, this is one that's also going to default for you. That is a change that I noticed in the admin before I was looking at this, but this report was made before that change was made. So normally when you guys come into your report, the injury or death section will be at none. If an injury or death does occur on the fire scene, this is where you'll need to come in and make that change. So let's say we go to the fire call and we have a civilian injury. I'll come in here and I'll make the selection of civilian injury. And as soon as I do that, you will note that the casualty tab up here at the top has now opened up for me. If I click into the casualty tab and I want to add that civilian casualty, I can go ahead and do so. As far as NIFRS is concerned, there's very few requirements here. Gender and date of birth. And then if you scroll down to injury info, injury time, injury date, and severity. Those are the 5 fields that are required. Now there's a bunch of other information in here that you can choose to document. So this is going to be one of those scenarios where your agency, whatever your best practice is, if we say, hey guys, we want you to complete this and this and this, fill out as much as you possibly can, then obviously we want you to put that information in here if it's pertinent to this situation. And then at the bottom here, there is a remarks section. So it's basically a narrative for this incident. Injury for the casualty, you can free type in there. You can put as much information there as you want. There's no limitations on how much you can type. So again, that's the casualty field. Again, only becomes available to you when you document that a civilian or firefighter casualty has occurred. If you accidentally added one in here, so maybe I was supposed to add 2 and I added the third, whatever it might be, if you need to delete a casualty from this list.
Our computer went to sleep. Hang on just a moment, please.
Okay.
We're back up, thanks.
All right, terrific. Okay, so again, if you accidentally added in a casualty that you did not mean to add in, if you need to delete it for any reason, that's over here on the right-hand side, our little hamburger stack, they like to call it there. You can click on that, click delete, and it'll say, are you sure? Yep, and you can delete that casualty from the report. And again, remember that casualty tab is only available if you select that a civilian or firefighter injury occurred. If you select none, then that tab will remain turned off. Directly below that, we have our fire or wildland selection area. Right now, as you can see here, it is blocked out, dotted line. I cannot make access to it. If I go back up here to my incident type and I change it to any type of vegetation fire, so grass fire, brush fire, whatever it may be, so I'm just going to go ahead and select grass fire. When I do that, now the fire or wildland tab is available for me here, and I can make that selection. Now, either one of these will complete the NIFRS requirements. So all of your state reporting will still be done accurately. You'll still have all those fields met. What this is going to allow you to do, though, if I go to the wildland module, it's going to give me a lot more in-depth type of information for a brush fire, for a field fire, for any kind of vegetation fire that you might be working with. So area type, you can document that. Type of right-of-way, you're not going to see that here on the fire module. Same thing here with weather information, you're not going to see that over here. Fire behavior, you're not going to see that in the fire tab. Cause and factors, those things you will see because they are required. So either one, no matter which one we use, they're going to be a requirement for us to complete. So you'll have to do those there. Acreage, again, total acreage is a requirement, so you will see that. You'll be able to plug that in. However, these additional options here below that, so percentages and so forth, you're not going to see those under the fire tab. And same thing with property information as far as crop burned and so forth. That is not available to you on the fire tab. Yes?
On the acreage, is there a menu that we can choose from for like less than 1 acre or 1 to 3 acres, or does it have to be typed in?
This is one of those areas where you do need to free type in how many acres was burned. And
Okay.
it can just be an estimation. You know, if you don't know exactly, I mean, you could put in that range too. I mean, you could go two to, I mean, you can go two. You can do whatever you want to do there. I mean, you could put in, you know, whatever you wanted to put. You can list as much there as you'd like. So it doesn't have to be that exact, like, oh my gosh, it was 2.5 acres. You know, if you don't know if it's 3 or 5, you can estimate there. That's perfectly acceptable as well.
Okay.
Again, with the property information down here, so like primary crop burn or something like that, if you have a field fire or something like that, and I don't know if you guys get into that or not, but that's available to you here. And then person responsible. Again, these fields are not all available directly within the fire field or within the fire tab, but it is available here in the wildland tab. Now, as far as making that selection and which is the right way to do it, there is no right or wrong. It is completely up to you guys. You guys make that determination. Your agency will make your best practice. Are we going to fill out the wildland module? Are we going to do the fire? It is completely up to you guys to decide. If I go back to my structure fire, to my building fire here, then again, you'll notice it automatically turned off the wildland, brought me right back to the fire tab because that is no longer applicable to that situation. Directly below that, hazardous materials released. When you click into this field, there's going to be 10 options available to you here to select. Numbers 1 through 8 are all considered small spills, easily handled. You know, so maybe it was an auto accident with a small gas spill, something like that, and you use a bucket of hydri to clean it up, that sort of thing. Very easy to take care of. Small spills, no big deal. Below that, we have the option for none. So if there was no spill at all, you can document that. And then the first selection you have here, option 0, special hazmat actions required or a spill greater than or equal to 55 gallons. If you select option 0 here from the top of the list, that will open up the hazmat tab for you. Here on the hazmat tab, there are a few required fields, not a whole lot, but there's a few. So the disposition, who handled it, was it handled by fire service? Did you hand it off to another agency to take care of, and so forth? Hazmat civilian injuries, civilian deaths, what kind of hazmat actions were taken, chemicals involved in this incident. So if you go to add the chemicals, it's just going to bring you to this generic list here. Just use your search right here. As soon as you click into this chemical list, you can just start typing and it'll bring up the list of any chemicals that match. You can start to pull those in there. So you can go ahead and list your chemicals as appropriate. And you can list as many chemicals as you need. You can add 2, 3, 4, 10, whatever it might be. Hopefully you don't get into a scenario like that, but it is capable of doing that if you need to. Cause of the release, other information about the release area, factors contributing to the release, vehicle that may have been involved. So if it was a tanker truck or something like that, that can be documented here. And then if it was equipment, so if it was a freestanding tank or something like that, you could document that information here as well. So again, not a lot of requirements there. Again, that'll be more so based on what your agency requires from each of your personnel. So, you know, the best practice that you put in place as far as what is going to be selected there, what is going to be documented. Directly below that, we have our action taken area. So in this section on the basic page, you can list up to 3 actions taken by your agency at this location. So if this was a structure fire, I could go ahead and action taken number 1 here. We'll go extinguishment. Action 2, salvage and overhaul when we were completed, and maybe action 3, we did a little bit of investigative work when we were done. So I've listed those 3 here. When we jump over to the unit reports page here in just a few minutes, you're going to see that for each unit that responds to the call, we can list an additional 4 actions taken. So if this was a simple fire alarm and we had 1 engine respond, we could list up to 7 actions taken. 2 units, 11, 3 actions, 15, and so forth. It just keeps expanding by 4 each time. So you can break down those actions however you'd like to do so. Our next section down, mutual aid given or received. It does default to none. If for any reason, obviously, if you do have mutual aid given or received during that call, you'll go ahead and document that as appropriate. So if I were to change this to mutual aid received, that's going to open up my aiding agencies here at the bottom. You guys will need to build your list of additional agencies that you guys respond with on the administrative console under the general information. There's a place for other agencies. This is where you'll build those folks in. So any agencies and their fire departments that you guys might work with in your area, you'll just want to list those folks here. If you don't have any, or you guys don't do any mutual aid ever, then obviously this list will just remain blank. Same thing with mutual aid or mutual aid given. If you guys respond with another agency, then you'll just list that agency that you responded with there. Do you guys do any mutual aid?
Yes.
Okay, so again, you just need to get those lists built in there so you have those available to you so you can make the proper selections. The last thing I wanted to point out here with the mutual aid section, you'll notice with mutual aid given, so when you are responding to someone else's call, the fire tab here at the top is still available to you, but that yellow exclamation point has gone away. So in that scenario where you are responding to somebody else's incident, they are technically responsible for reporting all of the fire-specific information. You are not responsible for doing that as far as state reporting. We do leave the tab open available to you. That way you can put the information in for your own purposes if you want. But again, as you can see here, you are no longer required to do so. All right, next section down is our location information. So again, when we imported from CAD, our address came across, so we've already got that information completed here. You will need to plug in the location type. So let's just say it was a street address, and then property use. Let's say for this individual situation, this was a residential structure. So let's go ahead and document 419, single or family dwelling. If it was a mixed use property, you can document that second use directly below. Census tract information, if you want to use that, detector alerted occupant, you can document that there as well. Times for this call. So again, these are the overall times for this scene. These are not necessarily correlated to one individual unit. This is the overall times that were put in. So the time that the call came in, dispatch notified, those are basically the same. First unit that arrived on scene. So if engine 1 were the first unit to arrive on scene, then this would be their arrival time. And then last unit cleared, if this was engine 4 that left the scene last, that would be their time. It's not necessarily, again, given by one individual unit. It's by the overall scene time, so by your whole agency. Fire under control, if you want to list that time if it's appropriate, you can document that here, but that is not a required field. Our counts. So here we have our suppression and EMS apparatus that are listed on this call, along with the number of personnel. So you've got those folks listed here. And then our loss category here, so if we have this structure fire where we need to document losses, we can go ahead and document property losses, content losses, you can document that. You can put in 0 if you wish, if there was none, or you can just click the none button down the right-hand side. Persons or owners. When we're talking about any kind of facility or anything like that, you are able to list the persons or owners that are associated with that location. So if I wanted to add an owner to this property, I could go ahead and do so. So I can add in that. If I wanted to list his phone number, contact information, whatever it might be, I can do that there. And then if this was their home address, obviously I can just click same as incident and it will populate that information for me right here into the report. You'll notice that once I added an owner, that add owner button went away. You are only able to add one owner per call. If you want to add additional persons, you can add as many of those. So if this was like a hotel or something like that, where you had the owner of the hotel, the manager was on site, the head of security was there, you could add in all those additional personnel there if you wanted to do so, if that was something that was pertinent for that call. The authorization section, so this is just going to be the person who initially started the report. So Anthony was one that was playing around with this one. That's why this one opened up. That's why his name is located there. If I had been the first one to go in and work on the report, then my name would be there. So you can change it if you need to. Some agencies have one person who starts the report and then has an officer look at it and authorize it and close it out. So they'll change it to the officer that locked the report. That is completely up to you guys, how you guys want to operate, how you want to take care of that situation. Officer in charge. So as you can see here, these are not required fields, so we do not have these turned on at this point. If you do need those though, all we need to do is do a number of things. Number one, if it's the same as the person filling out the report, you can click same as reporter and it'll pull that information up right from the section directly above. If it's not the same as reporter, then all you needed to go is go into the list here, scroll down, find whoever was in charge of the call, whoever your OIC was, make that selection, and then you've got that completed there. Now, as far as the officer in charge goes, there's a lot of agencies that say, yeah, we really want to know this for all of our fire scenes. but we don't necessarily need it for all, 84% of our calls that we go on, which are our medical calls. So you can turn this on as a required field if you wish to do so, but that will require your EMS crews to go in here and fill this out every time that they do that. So some agencies, like for our department, we know that if we go to an EMS call, we do not need to complete this officer in charge call because we really don't have an officer in charge per se at that point. But any kind of structure fire, any kind of rescue operation, any kind of other activity that we go on, we know we have to have the officer in charge here in the report. So we just go ahead and do it. And that way we don't have to turn it on as a requirement during all of our medical calls. So it's not up to you guys, obviously. You can set it up however you want. There's no right or wrong. Do whatever works best for you as far as whether you make that a requirement or not. And then our last section here at the bottom, the incident narrative. This is a required field. The last update that they ran in the fire software, for whatever reason, the little red required box that should be here has disappeared for whatever reason. So when you are filling out this report, just remember it is required. If you go to the validation issues list, it is still going to be listed there for you. Incident narrative required. It'll take you right there. So you will need to complete that. The next time they run an update for the fire software, that required button will make its return at that point. A couple things to point out here on the narrative. Number one, the narrative does have spell check, so it gives you that red squiggly line. You can right click, make your selection there, make your correction. And then number two, just like on the EMS side, we do a auto-saved feature here with your narrative section. So if for some reason your computer would shut off or you get disconnected from the web, the narrative information is saved every 5 seconds. And that way we ensure that you don't lose too much narrative information if something like that were to occur. We would hate for you to have to go back and redo an entire narrative because that's a huge pain in the butt. So we want to make sure that that does not happen. So we do the auto-saved feature for you here within the incident narrative. All right, so when I completed the incident narrative section here, you will notice that my yellow exclamation point has disappeared here in the top left-hand corner, indicating to me that this page is now complete. All of the required fields have been filled in, and I am done with that page. Are there any questions, concerns, issues over anything we've talked about so far?
No.
Okay. Our next tab to the right then is our unit reports page. So on the unit reports page, you are going to see all the apparatus that responded to this call. As things are put into the call, as things are added in, when you import from CAD, you should be seeing those things come across here. So let's just jump into our first unit here at the top. So engine 12. We'll go ahead and we'll jump in here. So engine 12, suppression, responding from, not required. I could document this if I wanted to. I could plug in that here. Priority, emergent. No response delay, so I could leave that blank or mark none or leave it blank altogether. And then here is our incident times. Now, for whatever reason, this unit did not have an en route or an arrival time. So for whatever reason, it didn't get put into dispatch. So it may have been that they were canceled before they ever got en route. So I could go ahead and I could click canceled prior to arrival, and that will shut those times off for this unit because it appears that they never got on scene. So I could click canceled prior to arrival. If that's not the case, then I would need to just go back in here and fill these times in. Now again, 99% of the time when that stuff dumps across from CAD, you are going to see that information completed here. You won't have an issue. But if you do need to fix it, you can correct it, you can add times, or again, like in this situation where this unit was probably canceled prior to arrival, just go ahead and click canceled, and that shuts the remainder of those times off. We will still want to list the personnel that responded on that apparatus. So let's go ahead and document a couple of people here. And then the unit narrative here at the bottom. So with an incident of magnitude where we have multiple units on scene, this is where we like to talk about the ability to get into this report. So as far as accessing a report, a big difference between the fire side and the EMS side, you don't necessarily have to be on the crew member list to access this report. And that's because on the medical side, we do that because of HIPAA requirements. Here on the fire side, we do not have those HIPAA requirements to worry about, so we don't have to go in and plug that data in. We don't have to worry about who's going to be there, who's not there, who can access the report, who can't. We do not have those things to worry about. In addition to that, on the EMS side, only one person can access a report at a time. One person. Here on the fire side, you can have multiple people in this report all at the same time, all working within this same report. So when I'm looking at these unit reports where I've got 4 units that were on scene, the officer from Engine 12, the officer from Medic 102, the officer from Medic 103, and the officer from Engine 14. Each one of those individuals could be on this report at the exact same time, working on this report, filling out the information for their individual unit. You could have 4 people logged in here if you wanted to, all working on this report. So the only thing with that, when you are doing something like that, please keep in mind that if more than one person is working in the same location, so let's say you have 2 people in here on the basic tab, they will not be able to see each other's changes in real time. So normally, like for our agency, we always assign who's going to start the report, who is going to do the basic tab, and then as far as the unit reports go, that's where the unit officers will go in and put in their individual specific data. So just something to keep in mind there. You got lots of access to this thing, but just make sure that everyone's working where they should be so that you're not duplicating each other's work. So we've got Engine 12 completed. Let's go down to Medic 102. We'll go ahead and complete that information as well. We're just going to work through the same 4. This one's good. We've got all of our times completed there, so that's good. I can list my personnel again. Oops, let's go down here, add a couple of folks to this one. Unit narrative, you can plug those folks again. Unit narrative there if you'd like. We'll go down to Medic 103. Again, same thing here, filling out the required fields, making sure we've got everything as appropriate. If we're missing something, you can plug that in here. So again, I can just add that 1614 if we missed dispatch time. Again, add my personnel and unit narrative. And then last here, we're going to go to engine this one. So our priority, emergent, dispatched at 1615. Other times are all good. Again, go ahead and add my personnel. And we've got that section complete. Now, I've put everything in here, but you'll notice there is a yellow exclamation point still listed up here. So I've got some kind of error, something that I need to complete. So if I go back up here to my validation issues, it's going to let me know that my en route time must be before or equal to the unit arrival date and time. So if I click on that, it's going to take me right where I need to go. There it is. That was put in an error by dispatch. So I can go ahead and change that en route time. And now I've got that issue fixed. So now that yellow exclamation point has gone away, my validations have gone down, I've now got that information completed. Questions on anything so far here on the unit reports page?
I have a question. Can you mark off who's driving, and can you track driving hours per unit through this scheduler?
So at this point, the answer to that is no. What they're working on a module now that's going to be coming out. They're telling us the first quarter of next year. I'm hoping that's the case. Basically, what it is going to allow you to do when you build that module, you'll build in your crews. So you're going to have Engine 12, Engine 14, A shift, B shift, and C shift crews. You'll be able to list who's assigned to those crews, what unit they're assigned to. So when I come into a call, and I import my data in, and it shows that these 4 units responded to this call, the personnel that are assigned to that call based on that shift information will already be there. So you will not have to go and add the personnel and things like that. In addition to that, you can also go in and you can add in who was the driver, who was the officer, and things of that nature. Now, until that happens, if you wanted to track that kind of information, you could do so. Like if you wanted to track who was the driver for that apparatus, you can do that here under the personnel section. And right now it's not turned on, but you could turn it on. So when you go to the personnel section here, we can turn it on so that you can list individual actions taken as well. So you could list operator, you could list officer. You could do that if you wanted to. It would just be a +1 code that you would build, and that way you could track however many times that person was the operator of the call. And then because you've tracked that, you could build a report, and this is a report that we can build in the software, where you could track every time. I want to know every call where they were listed as the operator, and I want to know how many times, how long from en route to arrival on scene, and I want you to tally all that time from en route to arrival, so we could see how many minutes they had actually been driving the unit. We could do that as well. Same thing with like a structure fire where you have somebody being the pump operator. If you wanted to track the time from arrival to the time that they cleared to give you a rough estimate of how many hours they have running the pump, you could do that as well if you wanted to. You could build that report in the analytics side and have that data available to you. The key to that, though, at this point, would be using the personnel section and putting in the actions taken by the individual personnel so that you could track that.
Okay.
And if that's something that you guys are interested in looking at doing, trying to build those reports with that complex of information can be a little bit difficult and time consuming. So the biggest thing is if there's something like that that you really need, let us know. Just email us at ESO and say, hey, here's the report that we would like to have. Here's what we'd like it to do. Can you get it for us? If another agency may already have that report built, we can just copy it right into your atmosphere. That way you guys have it. If we don't have that report yet, we can build it for you and make it available to you.
Okay. So going back to the personnel, you currently can't assign people to Engine 4, for instance. Is that
Correct.
Like
Correct.
at the beginning of the
Right. So if you
add them in.
do you guys use the mobile application on the EMS side?
Yes.
Okay. So if you
So
if you
we
don't,
do.
yeah, so it's just like on the mobile side. So when you create that shift information at the beginning of the day, you put in your crew members, you put in the unit that you're in for the day and things like that. We do not currently have that on the fire side. So at this point, you do need to go in each call and list the personnel that were on your unit. Again, the nice thing about it is if I've got these 4 units, I can have the officer from each one of these units go in and put in their own personnel and things like that. So it kind of shortens the time frame up to get it done. With that update that'll be coming, and like I said, hopefully the first quarter of 2019, you'll basically preset all of your units, all your crew members by shift and so forth. So when you're on B shift and you're assigned to engine 12, anytime that call goes out and it's engine 12 on B shift, your name is going to be there. It'll be there in the report. And that'll be a daily thing where they can change it. One central location, they can change it. So if somebody's covering for somebody else that day, somebody's off sick, things of that nature, they can alter those shift assignments, but there will be a default shift assignment to fall back on.
Okay.
Anything else on the unit reports page so far? All right, just a couple of other views that you can see here. So right now we're just looking at the units. If I go to the reports tab here in the center, that'll expand out. It just shows each apparatus. So the crew members, the unit actions that were taken by that apparatus, and then the narrative section. So you can see that for each individual unit that responded to the call. And then our last list here is the personnel tab. If you go to the personnel tab, that will just list everyone who was on the call. Doesn't matter which unit they were with. You're just going to see them all listed here. So we've got the basic tab complete. Yellow exclamation point is gone. We've got the unit reports complete. Exclamation point is gone. And then our next step is going to be to move over to the fire tab and complete that information. Now, the information that is required here on the fire module will be dependent on what you have documented previously in this report. So for instance, if I had documented our incident type as a mobile property fire, then obviously the mobile property section down here would be required. In this situation where we've documented that we had a building fire, the structure section is going to be required. Another example right here at the top of the page, number of residential units in the building. The only reason that this was required is because in my property section, I had listed that property use was residential. So now it wants to know how many units. So I can go ahead and I can document that information here. That's the only reason that's required. And that will change depending again on the type of incident that you select. On-site materials, currently nothing required here, but again, if you had a storage facility, manufacturing facility, something of that nature, and you wanted to document any materials that were on site, that could be documented here. The ignition section, this is always required because if we have fire, we have ignition. So you'll need to complete all of the required fields here. With the ignition section, so area of origin. So let's say in this situation, we had a kid playing with a lighter up in their bedroom. So I'm just going to go ahead and select bedroom here. I'll document that. Heat source, let's just say we had that open flame lighter. Item first ignited. So maybe they were just playing around by the mattress and the sheets and so forth, and they lit the bedding and so forth on fire. Type of material ignited. So I can go down here, fabric or textiles, go ahead and make that selection. Cause of ignition. So this is the area where we are going to make access to the last tab that we have not yet talked about, the arson tab here in the top right-hand corner. If you select intentional, unintentional, cause under investigation, or cause undetermined after investigation, any of those four, that will open up the arson tab for you here in the top right-hand corner. So let's just say this was intentional. Go over here to the arson tab. As you can see, no yellow exclamation point appears. So there are no requirements as far as NIFRS data is concerned. However, there is a bunch of information that you can document in here. So you can list the agency referred to. So if you guys handled it, you don't need to fill this out. If you're handing it over to the state fire marshal's office or something like that, you could list that information here. Case info, so the status of the case, property ownership, initial observations, arson info. If someone made entry into a facility and lit it on fire and so forth, you could add all that information here. If an incendiary device was used. Juveniles. So in this situation where we had a juvenile involved, I could add juvenile information here if I wanted to do so. Again, it's not required, but you could if you wanted to. And then the remarks section here at the bottom, this is basically just a narrative section for the arson investigation. You can free type as much information there as you want. Normally, in this situation, you're going to have additional items that are going to be part of the report. So you might have some handwritten notes that need to be added to the report. You may have photos that were taken at the scene of the crime and so forth. Anything like that that you want to include in the report, that can be done up here in the top right-hand corner, our actions panel. When you click on that, you can choose to print the report if you would ever need to. Hopefully you don't, but if you did, you could print the report. And you can also add attachments. So adding an attachment, basically, let's say you have a camera, you take 10 or 15 photos, and you want to include those with this report. Just to save them to that computer, click Add Attachment, find the file folder wherever those files are stored, and import those in. The only restrictions on attachments as far as ESO is concerned is the attachments must be less than 5 megabytes each. So I could have 10 photos at 4 megabytes each, 40 megabytes total. That's perfectly fine as long as each file is under 5 megabytes. You can have as many attachments as you want. With attachments, as I always tell every group that I train with, obviously follow your department's policies for adding attachments, what devices you're allowed to use, where those photos are stored, things like that. Make sure you follow policy as appropriate there for your attachments. Any questions on the attachment section or the arson page in general?
Nope.
All right, back to the fire tab then here. Scroll back down. And again, if it was unintentional or anything like that, again, that arson tab does remain available to you so you can document appropriate information. Factors contributing to ignition. So maybe this was just misuse of a product or material. So I can go ahead and document that. Human factors contributing to ignition. So this person was unattended. Age was a factor. So I can go ahead and document that. So maybe this was a 5-year-old male that was playing with a lighter, lit the bedding on fire. Our next section, equipment. Nothing required here at this point. If you had filled out that this was a stove fire, if this was a electrical panel file, anything like that where you would have electron or equipment involved, then you can go ahead and document that equipment here. Even though it's not required, we do allow you to document stuff here. So if you needed to go ahead and document that, you could. If there was something that was appropriate, you could document that there if you wish to do so. Directly below that, again, like we were talking about with your mobile property. So if I had a car fire, trailer fire, truck fire, whatever it may be, obviously these fields would then all be required at this point. Again, because we have a structure fire, they are not. However, we do have times when vehicles do become involved with a structure fire. So if that happens, you can click mobile property fire involved. So not involved in ignition, but burned. You can go ahead and document that here. If it was initially like started in a garage and you think the car caught fire initially and that lit the building on fire, involved in ignition and burned, you can document that there as well. And then our structural information, we'll go ahead and we are required to document this. Obviously we have a building fire, we've got a structure information, we need to document that. So structure type is an enclosed building. Building stories above ground, let's say 1-story house with a basement, so 1 story below. Building status, normal in use. Length and width in feet. this just gives you a rough idea of how many square feet you're dealing with. We don't ask you to go out there and use a tape measure or one of those little roller wheels or anything like that. Just give you a rough estimate. This will give you a rough estimate of your total square footage on the ground level. So you can just kind of document that there. Just gives you an idea of what you're dealing with. Story fire of origin, so it was on the first floor. Fire spread, you guys arrived quickly, so it was confined to the room of origin. Item contributing most to flame spread, if you want to document that. Type of material. Number of stories with damage. So you can document that here. So we'll say this was 1. Minor damage. 1 floor with minor damage. And then our protective systems. So if there was a detector present, so in this house there was, we'll say present. What type of a detector was it? Say smoke detector. Power supply. Battery only. Detector operated? Yes. Detector operated. And then since it operated, was it effective? Yes, it did. Occupants responded. They called you guys, and you guys got there quick. If it did fail for some reason, you'll document that here under failure reason. And then presence of an automatic extinguishing system. The last fields that we need to complete here for this residential structure, probably none present. If you're at a commercial or industrial site, you can go ahead and plug in this information then as appropriate. So we'll just go ahead and say none present here. As soon as I do that, you will notice that last yellow exclamation point has disappeared. So I've got no additional fields that are required. My validation issues here at the top have turned to 0. So I know that I've got everything completed. I've got it all done. And if I go to the validation issues list here, 0 validation issues. And again, just like you see on the EMS side, when you've got this done, you can go ahead and lock this report. Before I do that, a couple of other things to point out here real quickly. Up in the top left-hand corner where you see the fire incident number. If you want to add additional exposures to this report, you could do so. So if it was a detached garage became involved or a neighbor's house, whatever it might be, you can add that additional exposure here. And you can add as many exposures as you need. There's no limitations there. Over in the right-hand corner, we already talked about attachments. If you need to print the report for any reason, it'll give you the option of what portions of the document you want to print. And then you go ahead and click next. It'll give you the print preview. For those of you that may have been around a while, you know what the old handwritten reports look like. This should look very, very familiar to you here in just a second when you see what our printed view looks like. So it's just like it was back in the day. So everything is filled out the same that it was. Again, it's just coming across from the computer instead of handwriting the information into the actual report. You'll notice a couple of the fields here are blacked out. That is because you guys have privacy protected printing turned on. So basically, when you go to print this report, it is going to conceal, it's going to redact any information that might give away names of victims or anything like that. All of that information remains hidden. That way, somebody who's not supposed to get their hands on it doesn't get that information. If you need to turn that off, all you need to do is go to the admin console. You can shut that option off, and then from there, it'll print all of this information at that point. Narrative sections are there. Authorization section, crew members, units, and so forth, all listed down here at the bottom. So quite a bit of information for you there. And the last thing to talk about here before we lock this report is this little headset icon that you see here in the right-hand corner. This is our dispatch. So basically by clicking that, there it is, you are going to see all of the notes that your dispatcher types in during that call. So in this situation, this was a medical call. So this is what was going on here. Those are all the notes that they put in. So a situation where you have a fire report, it's going to be second alarm requested time, third alarm, fire under control, all those kinds of things. It makes it easy to go back and reference that information, put that information into your narrative, and so forth. So again, once you've got copy and paste this, it depends on the device that you're using. The device I'm on now, I cannot highlight this for whatever reason, and I'm not sure why. On my other computer that I've used other times, I have been able to copy and paste. So I'm not really sure why that is. I don't know if it's something on my computer or if it's something with the actual browser. So I don't know for sure, but I believe you are supposed to be able to copy and paste because they want you to be able to drop this information in there. Any other questions?
No, we're good.
Okay, So when I've got this report done, again, I'm happy with it. I got everything completed the way I want it. Go back to your validation issues, and then you can go ahead and lock the incident. As soon as you lock the incident, it's going to change to locked status here in the top right-hand corner. I can still look at this report. I can still see all of the information. I'm just no longer able to add any additional data or make any changes at this point. So you can still see it. You just can't make any changes. Going back to... I'm sorry, what was the question?
So what happens frequently, because we're a combination department, is the on-duty crews will enter in all their information currently. And then once they're done with it, it comes to the administration office via digital, obviously, and then they enter in all the volunteer folks who responded to the call as well. So how would that work?
Okay.
Once who locks the call, then what permissions does the admin staff here need to have in order to add additional personnel?
Okay, so in that situation, what I would recommend, the easiest way would be to take away the permissions for those folks to lock the reports. You guys can decide who gets to lock reports. It could be one person at your agency that lock reports. It could be the lieutenants and higher. It could be the captain and higher. You guys can make that determination. So for agencies in a similar situation to you guys where they have somebody fills out the report and then somebody else is ultimately responsible for looking at it beforehand to make sure that everything is appropriate, basically, that person who fills out the report, they go through. They fill out the report as best they can. They get all the data put in that's appropriate, and then they validate it, and it has, say, 0 validation issues. So everything's completed technically, but there's no lock button. It's just not there. So they let it sit in draft status. At that point, then your administrator will go in. They will see that report in draft status sitting here. They could click on the report. They could go into it, finish up whatever they need to add into it, and then when they are done adding that additional data, they can lock the individual report. That's one option you have. The other option,
okay,
if you go down here to these locked reports, you can always, a locked report, so there's the one that we just finished up. If I go here, and again, you can unlock a locked report if you need to. So again, only a select few administrators will be able to unlock that report, but they could unlock it, go back in, add that additional data in at that point, and then relock it when they were done. So that would be an option as well. It just kind of depends what would work best for you. I would say probably the easiest way would be to limit who has the ability to lock reports. That way they can still complete it. They can still put in all of their information. They just won't be able to close it out when they're done.
Okay.
Any other questions on what we've talked about so far?
No, I think that was it. Thank you.
Okay, and then the last thing we wanted to hit on here, we wanted to talk about that import from EHR. So I don't know if you guys are going to be doing this, completing your NIFRS report for every medical call. Most agencies that we're working with now are starting to go that direction because they want to be 100% compliant with their state reporting. So they're filling out that incident report for every single time an apparatus leaves the station. So on those medical calls, you get back to the station or you're coming back from the hospital, whatever it might be, you've got your medical report done, you've locked it. If you're using the mobile app, you've synced it to the server, and as soon as you do that, it becomes available to you here on the Fire side. So you come into the Fire incidents page, you click Import from EHR. Here are those lists of calls that are available. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab this one right here, this one from yesterday. So I click Open. It's going to give me some information just to double check that, yep, this is the call that I want, and I go ahead and click Import. When I do that, it starts the Fire report for me. And it has much less, so we had what, 20 some validation issues on the first one. This one we only have 8. Now this incident type, this would normally be completed in the EMS report. So if you plugged it in there, so if it was that EMS call, that field would already be completed as well. Station information, you will need to document that. District information, you'll need to document that. Actions taken. Again, this can be documented on the EMS report if you guys choose to make that a requirement. So if you did, you could have that already in there that provided ALS support. That one would already be done. Mutual aid would be done. Location information is done. Property use, again, is another field that can be set to be completed on the EMS side. So that could already be done as well. Times will come across. Apparatus counts. Report writer, so that'll be there. Officer in charge, document that if necessary. And then incident narrative is going to be the last requirement. So with the incident narrative, and people are always like, wait a minute, I just filled out a narrative on the EMS side. Why can't I duplicate it here? The reason for that, because of the HIPAA data that is involved in an EMS report and an EMS narrative, NIFRS basically says, don't send us that information. We don't want it. Don't put it in your incident narrative here on the fire side. We don't want it. Don't send it to us. So what we recommend and what most agencies are going to hear under the incident narrative for a simple medical call, let's say we were dispatched on a chest pain. If I could type this morning. Chest pain, transported. And that's it. And we know that there's an EMS call associated with this that people could go back and they could see the full report on the EMS side. Other people are just doing CMS report, putting that in. Now, obviously, if something above and beyond that normal EMS call occurs, so maybe you're dispatched for a patient with difficulty breathing, you get there and the guy weighs 800 pounds and it takes, 2 extra units on scene. You have to cut a hole in his wall to get him out of the house. Those sorts of things, obviously, we would want you to fill out that narrative here then, putting in all those special kind of details that you did. But for a simple EMS transport, there's really not a whole lot of reason to put any additional information here, especially HIPAA data. We don't want that at all. So as you can see, the unit reports page is already done. Most of these things that we hit on here were already going to be completed. So property use, action taken, incident type, those will be done on the EMS medical report. So when you import that in, you'll basically have 3 or 4 fields that you'll have to complete. It'll take you a minute or 2 at the very most, and you'll have it done. And that's all it takes. Lock the incident, and you're on your way. Questions on how that works? Any concerns?
I don't think so. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and that's the hope. The hope is that it's simple, it's easy to use, it's user-friendly. We don't want to make your life more complicated. That is not the goal. The goal is to make this as easy as possible. The guys that started the ESO company, I mean, they were firefighter paramedics as well, so they know what it's like. They've been there. So, at 3 in the morning, nobody wants to have to fill out 2 reports. It's kind of a pain in the butt. I just want to go back to bed. But in this situation where you can import it in, it takes just a matter of a minute or 2. And you've now got your NIFRS report completed, and you're 100% compliant. You've got all the data that you're supposed to have. Any questions, concerns, issues, anything at all that we can hit on at this point and discuss? Anything that we can talk about in addition to what we've already talked about?
It's good.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you guys' time this morning. I know it's not always so fun to sit and watch somebody else clicking around on the computer screen. So certainly appreciate your guys' time. If you guys do have any questions moving forward, so as you start to get in here and play with this a little bit and you're doing some import from EHRs or just building those fire reports, if any questions, concerns, issues, anything at all comes up, please do let us know. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you do have and make sure we get you all the information that you need to make this a successful transition to the ESO fire incidents module. So anything we can do to help that, please let us know. But otherwise, appreciate you guys' time, and you guys have a terrific day.
Thanks.
Thank you.